All right, we're going.
All right, so that means we're live.
We are.
That's
Yes.
awesome. Yes,
I,
we are. We
I
just
turned off my ceiling fan. We should be, not pegging your machine this week like I did last week.
yeah, and
Like
I,
a,
I
like
I'm hopeful I use the holiday weekend to finally do the separate machines thing, but I still haven't.
is that like a
Which
real world like DDoS? Like I'm just like pegging your machine through
I don't know. For those
through
who are tuning in,
video
I'm
compression.
I'm Doug, and over that way is Todd. That way on
Yes.
the screen. Yeah, we're gonna cover some Office
Wait,
360
no.
M365 build announcements, all sorts of fun stuff, right? So I got nothing but dev for my side,
Oh,
right?
nice.
I mean, nothing but dev. So if you're in the mood
Very
for
cool.
something different, this is not the show for you. But good, approachable dev, like happy dev.
Well, it is a build week, so it should be dev,
Yeah,
right?
teams dev is my topic du jour.
Yes.
I'm super
I've
excited.
got I've got some super geeky, nerdy dev stuff. We're talking Jupyter notebooks. We're talking auto-generated code. Like, dude, this is the first time in my professional career that I think like, wow, I can actually see a path to AI generated code from natural language.
There was some crazy stuff that Charles Lamana showed off in some of his his things where I
Uh,
was a little like, I love seeing the. So should we just get into it?
let's rock and roll, man.
I mean, I think we're looking sharp, so we'll roll with that. All right, so I have first. I'm gonna do the Microsoft 365. I'm just gonna skim this one, right? So there's announcements around graph authentication, app security, insights, connector powered workflows and experiences, right? Like great stuff, including like search, e-discovery, integration. You should really check this out. Fluid Framework got a huge kicker, and integration
Mm,
stuff, and that allows that massive concurrency of simultaneous edits and everything else up into the
right.
hundreds of users in an individual session with low latency performance. So there's a lot of stuff that came out around that. This stuff's a little edgier than the normal stuff, right? Like Mailbox 1.8 supported on New Outlook for Mac, and
What do you mean edgier? What does that mean?
um, I
Like,
just mean it's more of the pro dev type stuff.
okay, got it. Yeah, 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 sure.
Maybe a little less approachable for everybody, but Viva Connections extensibility went into private preview. I thought that was pretty cool on top of the SharePoint framework. So if you're a SharePoint framework one, I'm going to dive into the Teams thing on top of it, but the new SPF framework, the whole Fluent design system, and the Fluent vNext. Now, if you are a UI slash, a little more Intuit developer, the Fluent Web Components obviously are approachable, but some of the other stuff's just a little more pro dev. So this post, which I have in my thing, is interesting, but it's a little more pro up than the rest of what we're going to talk about, which I really want to focus almost the entirety of my time slot on this
I'm excited.
beautiful post. Have you read this? Or am I?
Not extensively.
I can't
I skimmed
even.
it.
I can't even. So shared stage
I saw the
integration,
stages.
right?
Yep.
You see the shared stage
This is
integration
great,
in
dude.
public preview, right? Enable multi-user
So,
real-time by extending the main stage of a Teams meeting to have apps and share the app with other attendees. I
yep.
mean, it's just awesome from a user experience standpoint. The new meeting event API is available in preview. So now you have all the new meeting events. And we've covered a couple of
Mhm.
those, but remember we had the whole like, hey, here's all the composable elements. The whole reason we have this crazy logo up there is because there's a GUI and API and a power something for that. And this one really just opened up the event canvas for on top of that. Together
Mhm.
mode extensibility is coming this summer, and you can do a preview of your own custom theme designs for your rooms for
So,
Together mode.
I saw one yesterday that I thought was amazing. Someone used the Muppet Show, the canvas from the Muppet Show, where they're all in their little boxes,
That's
and
amazing.
made that.
I
That's
just
brilliant.
like I don't know. I just like this is when remember we always start with this core and then we have little more options and then eventually we start to open it up. We offer extensibility and governance and control and all these refiners. So you're seeing some
Hmm.
of these features move into the refinement stage, which I'm super jazzed about. I haven't seen that one, but
Super
I would
excited.
absolutely love to. The media APIs are coming this summer, so you'll soon be able to utilize Teams meeting media APIs, provide real time access to the audio and video streams. I, I'm kind of blown away by that. Like we obviously do some things on top of that, but now other sockets can come in and have access to the same real time media
Wow.
stream. Now there's obviously
Like I
admin
feel
control.
like you and I talked about this before too, because you've talked a lot about some of the work you've done in your past life,
Yeah.
extending on top of like OCS and
Yeah.
Link, and I feel like now some of the stuff in Teams is now beyond what was ever there.
I am close on almost everything and beyond in certain categories to what I used to do in the UCMA.
Still?
There's really two things.
Curious.
There's two things that are still missing. And I don't mind
All right.
sharing it. We're talking developers and we're talking candid, and we always do on the show anyway. So there's two things missing, in my personal opinion. The first one is service-side impersonation. So I can't pretend to be you, to act on your behalf as an intelligent. I have to have a user authentication, context, and token. Now, I can have a service act and say, but I can't pretend to be Todd. And there are some legit scenarios as a developer you used to be able to do in UCMA, because you were running as, when you deployed a UCMA server-side extension, you were running as essentially as a Skype or Link server entity, so you could do whatever you needed to, right? You could manage people's settings, their present states. You could do, this is where I used to jokingly change my present state using the UCMA API to running with scissors. Now, I could still do that for me as a bearer token, but if as a developer, you wanted to run through and move people administratively, like into a category of planning through or you want to do a true call on behalf of, those are reserved functions. You can do some of it, but not all of it. Does that make sense?
So run it. Yeah, sure. Run as is missing. What's the other one?
True client-side development APIs. So things for like call pops. There are other ways you can do it, but you don't actually have a client-side event library. Now, I know some people are like, I don't ever want that. I want to do everything server-side. But there's a legit place for client-side dev. And Skype, OCS had it very rich. Link had it pretty rich. Skype had okay. So we sort of stepped away from permitting client-side development, which still is a rich canvas for things like call pops, CTI integration, those sort of things you still have to do on the desktop. And there are other ways to do it. Have a companion session broker, register your own endpoints, but they're much more complicated than simply saying, when a call comes in, I want to get the session headers and the identity. As a matter of fact, there's one thing I'm not going to cover this week, but I will next. Remember last week when I said to you, we were talking about Azure AD with the advanced conditional access controls and whether applications could take advantage of that authentication context all the way through? Whether a session entity can be handed all the way to the developer creating the application. The answer to that question is yes, you can. There's a blog post and a tweet from Alex Simons out of the Azure AD group with an exact example of last week. But it shows how an application developer would inherit and want to change the behavior of their application based on stuff that happened at time of authentication, right? So the example given is don't give access to a SharePoint site collection if a user hasn't proven themselves strong enough, or don't allow a download of a document unless they've done it. This is the same kind of thing. There's certain things that you would love to be able to pass through all the way to a certain event surface. In that case, it was like, do I have it in the authorization and authentication context for a third-party app? In this case, I'm saying when the session ID hits the client, what do I have? And the answer is Teams. You can do apps within Teams, but you can't integrate Teams client side to other applications running on the desktop. Super nerdy, but those are the two event surfaces that we currently, everything else, by and large, and there are other ways to approach that, so please, I know, if you know enough to critique me on this, then you know what the gaps are, and please don't. If you don't, understand there are limits on impersonation and client side. Otherwise, if you don't need those two things, and I admit those are boutique needs, I totally confess that, it's game on. And we have now passed by the vast majority of UCMA capabilities.
Right on. That's wonderful.
All right. So we'll continue our nerdy developer discussion on top of it. Azure Communication Services, Teams on interoperability. Now, if you have not played with ACS, very interesting service, right? Like you and I have done some nerd out stuff, like stood up sample applications and done beer night meetings with people to test out ACS because, like we know people who are like that. Corey Buzzle, Todd Van Nerden have played around with this thing out of the MTCs, right? So now they have the Teams interoperability guidance for how to do it. Because remember, you're standing up a voice service if you're going to use ACS. Don't do that poorly. Think about that. You can't just I have the sample application, I'm going to turn it on and turn on voice integration. You have to think about quality, management, security, integration, and the combo of the guidance for Teams and ACS is still evolving, but this is nice initial work around interoperability between the two to support some really cool at scale, public-facing comm service to internal stuff. So super exciting on top of that. Because some things just aren't a fit for licensure or assignment of a Teams entity. Do you know what I mean? Not everything is a fit for that. So ACS, built on the same comms engine as Teams, now has this interop guidance. And all right, The fluid components
That's
for
awesome.
teams are now in private preview. If you have not seen a performance demo of the concurrency of this thing, it's kind of amazing. For me, it's amazing. Have you seen any of the previews for like Xbox game streaming on the mobile devices? Have you done?
Oh yeah,
have you done that?
yeah.
at all?
I've been playing with it quite a bit, to be honest. Yeah.
Like, it's a little jaw drop for me that some of that stuff works, right? This is the Office document / component equivalent for me of that kind of jaw drop moment of performance. So it really is. Like, it solves some really complicated problems.
I'll buy
with some
it.
really
I'll
interesting
buy
ones.
it. I love it.
Adaptive cards for teams, tabs, is now available in preview. It's beautiful, right? So you can actually have the adaptive card presentation directly within a team's tab.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Now, new features, including people picker, search, enhanced images. We showed that. The information masking. We already covered this in one of our previous ones on top of it. Universal actions for adaptive cards are GAs for execution on top of it. The activity feed API is now GA'd, which we talked about a few weeks back, saying, hey, here's all these amazing things you can start to do on top of it. And
that was fast.
I know. And message extensions in Outlook on the web, providing a unified mobile experience that work on top of it. So you get your unified messaging experience on top of that as well. Okay.
Wow.
It's build. So let's talk about the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio is now available. If you have not played, if you went into the basic JavaScript tutorial, like developer coaching, it's not unapproachable for someone who's got like Visual Basic for Applications layer, dev skills, or PowerFX layer. I don't find JavaScript unapproachable. Do you agree? Like, it's a unapproachable language. If you add React on top of that for the UI layer, which is how the teams, UI stuff is put, and the Jumpstart equivalents on top of that, it's amazing, right? So you can do some really cool build outs, for advanced applications, the Jumpstart frameworks. And I went through some of the tutorials this week just to see how far they've come. Pretty slick. Like, you're up and running with minimal footprint, with just the ability to do app side loading and doing real-time code and deployment right out of VS Code for the sample applications in like less than 20 minutes with having nothing on your machine. I took a brand new fresh machine and I was deploying and running sample Teams UI applications in less than 20 minutes, including like the Node.js deployment and all the components on the box. So less than 30 minutes. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how far that has come. So I do have a fast internet connection. I'll confess that. But my PC isn't all that.
Well, don't even count. So
yeah. So you're not talking a lot of time to kick the tires on this stuff. Okay, the Teams Developer Portal, which gives you a dedicated app management available web or within Teams, where you can register and configure apps with a single central location. So we got the Teams Developer Console. Now check this one out: the Power Platform app and bot building environments. So now you can take apps, bots, and flows associated from one Dataverse for Teams to another, ensuring that you can. Did you catch that? Like, that's slick.
The moving from one environment to another?
Yeah.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yes. Right? So we also got an IT admin experience for admin notifications for coming apps is coming soon on top of it. We've got the Microsoft 365 certified app capabilities, so you can certify the app based on industry best practices, receiving a recognition badge to say that kind of like you've hit a quality level, if you will, on top of it. App configuration is now in private preview, so you can configure the applications on top of that. So you can join the preview program on top of that. App customizations is GA. So developers can now let admins rebrand their third-party apps to give it an internal flavor, which I thought was super cool. Like, you've seen this in iOS and other things. Like, now, for example, my NHL application, it's like Game 7 for the Wild, so go Wild. All right. So, but my NHL app now has the Minnesota Wild logo. Right. So this is the same equivalent thing inside of Teams where you can have that. That's kind of an expected, functionality. Do you feel the polish coming to the developer story?
Yes. Oh yeah. Because some of the stuff that's pretty deep, niche-y. I wouldn't say niche-y, but pretty complete stuff going on. That's awesome.
Search and compliance, Microsoft Graph connectors coming later this year. Admins allow third-party apps into enterprise search compliance and intelligent discovery via the graph. End users can search through app data, like how you search for Teams chat. So you'll have a rich search canvas. I know. I don't care about this one, what a lot of people do. The direct purchasing and invoicing in the Teams Admin Center for third-party applications. Kind of cool on top of that. Integrated apps in the M365 Admin Center is now available, so you can see the full integrated application stuff directly inside of the Admin Center. Power Platform Enhanced Distribution. We're making it easier to distribute to users. Soon you'll be able to share bots with Power Virtual Agents with security groups, just like you already can for apps for Power Apps.
Nice.
Right? Continued getting that refinement, the ease of publish, the ease of management, the governance control, the user experience branding, all that stuff. Now you can increase adoption through enhanced end-user app discovery experiences. So you can curate and hand-pick applications and organize them by top picks, popular applications. The categorization is now easier to understand. So you've got the different categories on top of it for like analytics, BI, developer, human resources. You can do app spotlighting. So you can essentially, curate it and like put certain things into the spotlight for doing things. And you've got organization, branding, and custom app categorization is now available as well. So then again, you kind of put your own branding around it, like the App Store to like, this is our application catalog, and put your own categorization and categories around it.
Mm-hmm.
You get enhanced discovery and usage of apps across channels, chats, and meetings. So you can have, we've always said like apps for this, like apps for Teams, but then there's contextual applications now that we've been pushing, right? These are the apps to enhance your meetings, your different experiences. Teams as an app surface is a really big deal. We've been talking about this for a while, but now the level of governance, control, refinement, UI, curation is really catching up with the context on top of it, including right down to discovery of applications through Teams Mobile. So they showed like you can put like a QR code in a conference room or something and then automatically get an application like added to Teams. So you can have like an enhanced meeting room experience. You can have on top of that. You can purchase subscription applications directly from the Team Store coming soon. So you could then go ahead and say, hey, I want to buy this line of business app and fold it into my M365. And then we've got a whole bunch more announcements coming on top of that. Now, I'm only going to show this one. The Teams Toolkit is what I was talking about to like go fast through. So they basically said, here's how you do it. Here's exactly how you do the hosting and the walkthrough. The React example is the one I went through. So the link will be in the post when we put it out there. And that, with Doug fast talking, is a 17-minute tour de force of just one item out of Build, which is the Teams development.
That was heavy, and dense in the best way, right?
So go read this thing, but look at how much there is. Like, you could really plumb out the Teams environment and really support both internal and third-party applications.
I think this, I don't know, this felt like a very substantive build. I mean, build is usually substantive.
Yeah.
But this build, I don't know, just felt super dense.
Actionable is how I felt about it. I thought it was highly actionable. Sometimes you tend these things and you're like, oh. Now there was some of that. Like some people are like, well, I still don't have access to code spaces, and why are you talking Visual Studio 2022 or whatever? And come on, right. I mean, we're going to do our ambition stuff, right? So it'll be a while till the next build. But there's a lot of actionability out of it, which I was super excited about.
That was awesome. Very cool, man.
I'm going to queue you up here. So you're going to cover. I'm gonna assume you're gonna start with some Power BI, and there it is.
Yeah, and this is kind of another roundup post, and I'll go through a couple of these in detail. I think I don't know. I think what I saw at Build that has to be maybe my favorite thing was the use of GPT-3 and language generation. And if you haven't checked out GPT-3, just go look up some YouTube videos of what GPT-3 it came out of OpenAI. We have a partnership with OpenAI, and it's language generation basically, or by language that could be English, it could be C++, right? It's language. So what we have here, and I'm going to talk about this in terms of Power Apps here in a minute, but this is an extension of using what we've had in Power BI for a long time, Q&A. But on,
do you mind zooming in just so we can see the graphics?
Yeah, you know what? Let me switch over to the full screen here. So what we have here is someone doing an easy measure, a write your own easy measure, rolling 10-day average of inspections, generate the DAX right on the fly, right? Yeah. So this is true using AI. This isn't language parsing. This is like really advanced state-of-the-art stuff where I'm taking natural language and translating that not only to the data in my model and my model with my columns and my tables, but with the DAX language itself. So it understands the domain specific stuff with the domain language that is DAX and generate the DAX here. This is freaking mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only going to get better over time, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how we use this across all of Microsoft, right? This is for DAX. I'm going to talk about it in terms of PowerFX here in a few minutes. But I mean, the possibilities for generation of text that is code is endless. My brain is wanting to explode.
It opens up coding to a whole, like, deeper functional coding to a whole new audience.
I've always had this kind of thought that natural language is the future of development, and that it's one of those things too where it's like, I don't know, is that real? Could that really happen? Could that really work?
It's getting close.
I think this is a hint that yes, it can.
Yeah.
Who knows where it's going to go? But I am not skeptical that that's legit. I mean, that's code generation with natural language. You can't argue with me on that. That's what just happened. So anyway, very cool. I love this one. Automatic aggregations in Power BI. So we've had aggregations for a while, which is the ability for a developer to go in and hand create these aggregations against massive data sets for performance, right? So you can, and you've seen this in like the billion row demo or a trillion row demo, and just massive data sets where you can slice and dice in Power BI against these massive data sets. So far, that's taken hand creation of these aggregations. What this is using ML and logic behind the scenes based on real world use of your model to automatically create these aggregations to increase performance against massive data sets. So this is very, very cool. Really excited to see how this progresses. This one I thought was great, and frankly, it makes something that you've been able to do with Power BI now for a very long time. Now you can do it all in Power BI much easier. So this is basically, let's say you've got some streaming data coming in. In Azure, we have Event Hubs, IoT Hub as two main ways to get streaming data, whether that's application telemetry coming in, logging data, whether that's IoT data coming in from devices, whatever, doesn't matter. Before, what you'd have to do is you'd have to go into Azure, spin up an Event Hub or an IoT Hub, spin up a streaming analytics job, write that streaming analytics job, output to Power BI, and kind of tie it all together. And frankly, we've been doing that kind of stuff for a long time. And it wasn't that hard, but it required a little bit of technical chops and Azure access and all of that. So now what you're able to do is do all that visually inside of Power BI with these streaming data flows. So I think this is really exciting and gives, you can see it, you can still get the drag and drop experience in desktop against these streaming data flows. Because before you had to go do all this over in the service. So I'm really excited about this one. This one was kind of I saw it light up in our portal a few weeks back. It was a little bit of a surprise, but I'm excited about this one.
I'm gonna go play with that. I have a streaming data set I do through the other way for the USGS for the creek in my backyard, just to bring it in. And
oh, nice.
So I was gonna, when I saw it, I'm like, I should go play.
So what kind of data are you getting from your creek?
Well, so there's several places where they have velocity of water, and what that means is whether I can take a canoe on it or not. Because if it's at certain places at certain points, I can't get through because the water is too low. So I stream the composite velocity, and I look for the indicators to see whether or not it's good canoe. And I have a function that sets up that basically sends me an alert, like today is a good canoe day.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. All right.
I mean, it's open data. The USGS lets you get it, so
love it, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So like previously some of you might know I automated my old swimming pool like heat.
That's the one
things,
I remember.
The swimming pool of things, and so but I moved on a creek, and now I'm like, well, damn, like I don't want to get stuck. I want to know how far I can go. So
right.
Anyway, sorry, but yeah. So for me, I had to do all this work and go in. It'd be much less approachable for someone who's not quite as nerdy. This would make it so almost anyone could do that stuff.
Correct.
And now you combine that with the natural language stuff that we were just seeing for moments ago. I mean, that's game on for fun stuff. Remember we used to do kids workshop, and we used to bring data in and have kids analyze data, all sorts of data.
Yeah.
We used to have like 7th graders, 6th graders come in, and we would teach them Power BI in like 30 minutes and how to build visuals and stuff. Todd and I used to do these kids events, and it was crazy the stuff they could even build once we showed them how to do it. Can you imagine what the class would be now?
That's pretty cool, man.
All right, sorry for the sidecar, but
Yep.
fun.
No, that's all right. Here's another one that I didn't know was coming and was pleasantly surprised to see. So if you're done any kind of dev in data science, especially in Python, you see a lot of this. Is this notebook idea, and Jupyter is a very, very popular notebook tool for doing data engineering, data work, exploration, data science, communication, and basically it creates almost like a visual story of what you're trying to show. And what we've now enabled is the ability to bring in Power BI reports and dashboards into Jupyter Notebooks as part of your story, right? So and what's neat about this is you can mix and match other types of visuals, other types of data, even other languages. It doesn't have to be Python to bring in these things. So you can see here, this is where someone's going and getting a specific report, authenticating, and then embedding that inside of their Jupyter Notebook.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
All right.
It's awesome. And this could be a great way to I'm even thinking like run a meeting, right? Like if you have a story to tell, you can set up your cells to tell each part of the story that you want to tell, and set up this notebook.
You're using your Jupyter Notebook like Sway.
That's yes, correct. Yes, I thought of PowerPoint, but I think that's even better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. All right. This one is the least sexy, but I maybe am the most excited about it because it comes up all the time with my customers these days. We've had deployment pipelines in Power BI for a little bit now, and they're good. They work. But there's still a lot of having to go click a button type of stuff that you have to do to deploy from dev to test to prod. And there's a lot of solutions in Power BI that people are building that don't require that level of lifecycle management. But conversely, there are also a lot that do. And especially with large organizations that we work with that have really tight process, they have to go through dev, test, and prod. Some of the stuff just wasn't fit to task as far as the manual pieces. Well, now we're bringing the deployment to pipeline APIs to Power BI as well. So if you want to start to use Azure DevOps to push these things through the pipeline from dev to test to prod, you can now do that using these APIs. So this is something that I knew would have to come at some point. It's here. This is preview, just to make sure. And some of the things that we're working on is creating pipelines automatically through the API, and then as well as the Azure DevOps extension, which basically just make it even easier than what we're providing here, because this is still kind of like calling APIs, but those APIs are now there. So if you need to automate your deployment pipelines of your Power BI content, now you can do that. So really excited about this one. All right. I think one or two more Power BI things. I thought this was a nice update to the Teams, the Power BI Teams application. And really what it does is it gives you, over on the left rail, you can have your Power BI app, just like, there's all kinds of apps that you can add there, like communities and Power Apps and all that. But now if you're viewing the Power BI app inside of Teams, only inside of Teams, you're not going to get this if you go to the web experience because it makes sense only inside of context of Teams. You'll get this new In Teams tab here. Well, you can kind of see that they're circled in red. And it's basically showing you, here's the reports that you've used from the context of Teams before, right? So, because who knows, maybe that report that you looked at was in some channel, in some team that you can't remember or don't feel like navigating to. Well, now you can just go to it from the context of Power BI and get to it the same way.
So it's almost like the activity tracker for Power BI reports that you used in the context of this tool, right?
Yes.
And it's your journal to go back and say, hey.
Yeah. So just a nice little user item there. I love it. I'm not going to go through the features in this, but it's May. Power BI report server update. If you're a report server user, go update and look through the features there. All right. Two more quick things. This is the extension of the GPT-3 and something called Prose, which has been around for a while. I'm glad to see us kind of coming back to Prose, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this is where the thing I showed in Power BI with DAX and natural language generation of DAX, we're taking the same idea using GPT-3.
Todd, can you zoom in a little? Can you?
Oh, yes.
It's just super tiny. That's all right.
Yep, let me open that in the new tab. Thank you for the reminder. So this is where someone's saying, show me the customers in the US whose subscription is expired. And it's basically giving two different suggestions like, hey, do you want this filter or this option or this option? And it's generating PowerFX code based on your natural language.
Do you know how hard it was for me to build some of those filters to get that logic right?
I mean, what a cool way to even just learn PowerFX, right?
Yeah, at least it can get you from a starter. You're like, oh, that's how you construct it. Like
Right.
if you're trying to do two sides of an OR off of a selector and you just get them each right, then you toss it into the thing and you put the button to like the acceleration of this for me personally is huge. Sorry.
This is absolutely bananas, man. So I love this.
Yeah.
All right. Oops, no, I skipped what I wanted to
What?
show. I don't want to do that. So we got GPT-3 with PowerFX. So one of the other things that's been we've had in other tools, it's in Power BI. We used to have a tool that was part of Azure ML that would do data engineering or data wrangling for you using this idea of pros. And that's something that came out of Microsoft Research actually quite some time ago, where you're basically programming by example.
Yep.
So I'm going to open up this in a new tab, so no one has to suffer through the tininess. Go here. All right. And this is basically saying, like, I just want to extract the prefix of their email, and it's going to generate the code. So this is also code generation, but in a little bit different way. I'm not using natural language. I'm using an example of how I want to parse something, basically. And it's basically taking a look at, what was the input, what was the output, and what it invented was how it got there, right? So you can see it's doing some trimming and those kinds of things to get there. And sometimes you may have to provide a couple examples to kind of get exactly what you need. But this has been in Power BI for Power Query for some time. Column by example.
Yep, it's like column by example in Power BI or Power Apps. Yeah. Beautiful.
This is so cool. So making it easier. Now, here's some new connectors for the Power Platform. And I don't call this out so much as, like, honestly, I don't know what Flotique is. I'm sure there's someone out there that's really excited about that connector. To me, like, the thing that stood out to me in this post was we are approaching the 500 connector milestone inside of Power Platform. I mean, I remember when I could say it's more than 100 connectors. Okay, now we're more than 200. Like, literally, we're almost at half of 1,000 connectors in Power Platform. And to me, like, yes, like Power Apps and Power Automate, the designers are great, making it really easy to create these business automations. But none of that would matter if you didn't have easy connectivity to all these common and widely used systems of record and systems of business process. So I don't know. To me, like, that was the point of bringing this one up, is like we're almost at 500 connectors in Power Platform.
That doesn't even count. That doesn't even count how easy it is to do a custom connector.
That's right.
Custom connectors. Right. You should go watch tutorial. Everyone thinks they're coding. They're not. It's super easy. Like, the example is like a Yelp connector that they have in the dev library. Last time I looked, takes you like 7 minutes, and you got Yelp data into your application. It's crazy. Right. So I just would encourage everyone to just put your creative hat on this. It's so amazing.
I'm with you, man. I don't know. It's exciting to see how far this stuff has come and where we are. So considering, like, half the stuff, dude, think about it. Almost probably all the stuff we talk about these days, none of it existed 6 years ago.
No.
Almost none of it.
It barely existed when we started our show 5 years ago. I mean, I remember us talking about, like, these foundational connectors and, like, this looks like it's going somewhere. Look at where it is. Look at where it is.
This new thing, Flow. Do you think that'll last? Like, it's pretty crazy. So neat, man. Well, I think we were pretty efficient, given this was a build week. We're only like 4 minutes over. Usually we go like 45, 50 minutes. But
I probably talked too fast, but it was such a great post, and I just it's so meaty. All
the good
stuff.
news is we're on YouTube. People can go back and slow it down if they want to hear you.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's like, you go too fast. I'm like, well, that's why it's recorded. Exactly. I think what an amazing, actionable week of stuff.
Yes. I am always amazed at the velocity and the innovation that comes out of our teams.
Amazing.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Well, it's almost Memorial Day.
It is.
Can you believe it? That's bananas.
There's so many things. Like, I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's staying safe. I hope you have a great holiday weekend. Enjoy time with your families.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week for some more fun. I'm going to go back and revisit that application example for authentication and peel that
Nice.
open a little because we said we would, and I want to. And I mean, it was just like the birdie landed with this exact example of what I was like. I wonder if this is possible. Yes, and here's how. So we'll unpack that next week a little. So continuing more extensibility than core features. I'm going to stay focused on that a little bit for a run here. We'll see how we roll.
Cool.
Have a great weekend, Todd.
See ya. You too, bud. Bye.